And if this is the case, and they have tried to inoculate with other beings that are under the order of the Federation, they would have to go through myself and Kennedy Jr. Only because it was authorized with another Democrat 3 years ago physically, an obtainment code through that document that was a peace treaty order at the time. And if the authorization is as us, and they do place him into the jail, they have to go to us. They have to initialize an order with Kennedy Jr. and I and sanctify a better and leaded, what they would call democracy, what we would call a pro and active communication standard throughout the whole entire realm, as it should have been in the first place. Otherwise, they're going to dock the entire replication affair of what happened, what would be, and what can happen with Space Force itself, and how the pro-enactment affairs can place a better order to the entire planetary realm and the cosmos. Wow. They cannot do that because it will go against their cosmic federal law. Biden will be in trouble.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 13. Blue, how are you?
I am good today, Mike.
What are we going to talk about today in episode 13?
Well, one of the major concerns that needs to be rectified upon this realm is the communication and transportation standards that are being placed, up to and including derailment of train systems and how a better system underground can be formatted, like tube status systems, including the rectifications of the currencies being pro-enacted through Greyhound that have currently placed their systems with Flixbus as of recently, and has caused a lot of problems with their system, which could be placed better. And that goes through similarities like the tube systems itself, and as well as the electromagnetic grid and the electronical vehicles they are placing out, the distribution zones, how an electrical equipment can even go down on its own. And that platform.
That's a lot to get into today, Blue. Can we talk first about this situation with 45, Donald Trump?
Absolutely. A systematic Biden administration is currently trying to place him in a fortified cell and jailing replications. And if this is the case, and they have tried to inoculate with other beings that are under the order of the Federation, they would have to go through myself and Kennedy Jr. Only because it was authorized with another Democrat 3 years ago physically, an obtainment code through that document that was a peace treaty order at the time. And if the authorization is as us, and they do place him into the jail, they have to go to us. They have to initialize an order with Kennedy Jr. and I and sanctify a better and leaded, what they would call democracy, what we would call a pro and active communication standard throughout the whole entire realm, as it should have been in the first place. Otherwise, they're going to dock the entire replication affair of what happened, what would be, and what can happen with Space Force itself, and how the pro-enactment affairs can place a better order to the entire planetary realm and the cosmos. Wow. They cannot do that because it will go against their cosmic federal law. Biden will be in trouble.
Well, some people in the country would say he's already in trouble, which is causing our country to go in a negative direction. What are the possible outcomes here, one way or the other? I mean, if they don't go through with this, that's obviously a better thing. But if they do go through with this, I understand what you just told me. But my question is what type of time frame would we be talking about? How long of a period of time will all this happen in?
en masse awakening protocol, if it does happen, then they're going to understand that the distributions of the documents that inletted between myself, individuals, and others elites, and the pro-enactment reform of the leaders across the planet will be up against the administration itself, the Biden administration. They'll be against them because they are pulling away from the distribution scenarios of the better technologies and the better mindsets for mankind.
Is it just me, or is there something behind the fact that I see Biden making visits with people I think are on his side already? Like, if I had to guess, if they were from a race of beings from another place or another time, I would guess that these people, whoever Biden seems to visit, it seems to personally benefit him and not necessarily our country. Is there something to that, or am I just imagining it?
It's all in one ending scenario protocol. If they can place of one agenda to inoculate for their species, they will. But there is one role that they can pro-enact against that, and vitality of the life forces itself. They are enacting a negative role. It needs to be distributed out of this realm. It does not need to be inoculated, because if you think about it, the snakes are coming out of the holes. If you think about it, the reptiles are coming out of their little bellies. And they're causing a problem across the realm. Fixation needs to be placed upon here as soon as possible to create an equilibrium.
And it's ironic to me that a lot of people think that because they're not immediately impacted, or because their personal life hasn't been immediately impacted, that, oh, it doesn't affect me. Oh, I'm not worried about that. Oh, that's those people that think they're in charge. I'm just going to be safe here on my little plot of land, and I won't have to do anything or be worried about anything because I can self-contain and all that. That's great. If you're prepared for a possible catastrophe, that's great. But is it fair to say that everyone on the planet will be affected by this?
Everyone would be affected by a catastrophe one way or another, but it depends on the mindsets and the standard ways to pro-enact the better status for mankind. Depending on how it goes, the timelines can be conjunctured throughout many intervals. It could go one way, or it can go the other, or it could stay in between. It depends on how one sets their mindsets and how the other pulls out through the generative wave base of what they know that is inducted behind the scenes.
You brought up an interesting thing about yourself and Kennedy. And for those who are new or just joining us, or just driving by, whatever, we're talking about Kennedy Jr. and you maintain that Kennedy Jr. is alive and well, right?
And Senior, yes. The choreography of the holograms or initial beings that were generated into another wavelength is real. The paradox effect, like clones of what I mentioned about, is real. There can be the good or there can be the bad. There are bad clones or there are good clones. There are bad ways of generating and saving paradox effect. There are good ways to generate and saving a paradox effect. Think about those two different plateaus. We've mentioned this before. They are generating cooling modules or saving Greece inertial wavelength that DNA replication upload has managed to itself formatted it.
Are we in a stage of time where there's actually war actively going on? I don't mean to just brush over the thing in Ukraine with Russia, but what I mean is in other realms, in other spaces, in other dimensions, in outer space. Is it possible that we are currently in a war?
Yes, and it also includes the bioelemental war that's going on with HARP. The generated plateau of the current quantum cosmic wars between the spatial rifts and the military's agenda to being able to stabilize the grid again because of its destabilization upon the core. Now, currently, water elementals that deal with the biogenetics on the plateaus with around the perimeters of the eastern sectors of Florida have generated a negative biopsis effect. These currencies stand for our like seaweed or chlorified, if you will, that it accumulated. They're generated through a negative artificial recompensacy wave. And if you think about the western perimeters of the outlining of the degenerative USA sector, there was dealing with and not supposed to be accumulated with colder structures at the time. Now, if you think about, there is a bioelemental war going on because HARP would generate, because of the bio and graphical imagery effects, negative replication lines. These negative replication lines would cause more harm and inductor points upon the plateau and upon the holograms itself. Remanaging the systematic wavelengths against their indexers will be able to restabilize the grid again. We're talking about communication. We're talking about electromagnetic interference. We're talking about the standards of the neural waves and the holograms itself. Yes, it does have to do with space. It has to do with the in-between. It has to do with a lot of what others are not understanding yet. It's time to wake up, expand your cells, pull out from this retrospect, and move forward into an age where you're supposed to move forward into, instead of decommissioning while letting the others decommission you.
Now, you're in a unique situation with your position with the Federation and the Space Force. How does your direct involvement impact us and or these wars that are going on?
Directed involvement is to be able to maintain the electromagnetic grid again, to stabilize the platform and the spatial rifts of the outer lining main lines, to be able to upload the geometrical wavelengths and stabilize what others need to have on their plateau, and to be able to work with others on the force's integrity code as well as the star seeds themselves, to be able to widen and expand the minds of mankind, and to be able to make the Extraterrestrial Department of Space Force a reality.
You know, I was speaking with my spouse the other day, and she had experienced a situation that she was sharing with me that I had experienced before as well. And I just thought it was due to health conditions, but she had told me she was experiencing like a vibration or a tingling effect that started in one area of like her hip area or leg and then down through her leg. And I said, oh, that's easy. You're just being uploaded, or there's an uploading in progress. And I was joking around with her about this. So she took it to a serious level and she started researching it. And she came across a lady by the name of Delores who spoke on the same things, saying that indeed there was some sort of outside, call it alien, extraterrestrial, what have you, some sort of interference, some sort of downloading, some sort of uploading, some sort of progression going on there. Is that your belief as well, that is possible?
To maintain the stability of quantum wave phases of the star seeds themselves, yes. There are generative photonic frequency codes among the forces that being able to re-stabilize the mainframe again. Thus, as is, upload and reimagine the wavelengths of mankind's calling codes. Think about the Bible. I know we don't want to really get into too much of that, but there are codes, clues, and concepts. In the very end, what it says, how mankind will be alternated, they will change to chosen ones, if you will. They will be changed into something different. How they went after they are risen up. There is a code in there that initiates what would happen upon that plateau, but it would be generated a little differently, obviously.
So
that's one of them.
If I've experienced this and my wife has experienced this sensation, is this something we should be happy about? Is this something we should be concerned with?
Well, if it's not harming your index or hologram point, then there's a maintain higher stability that may be an upload to your generative wave phase.
Now, someone like yourself who's an infused being, we re-explain to some people who may be just joining us what that means?
Infusal is a star seed, a replicative hologram of an avatar in an inertial wavelength, being able to maintain at a higher terrestrial speed than a normal human's calling codes. Thinking about star gods or what the ancient indigenous people would have maintained or seen or come across to the same or similar representations. And if you think about it, there could be more, there could be less throughout the timelines. Timelines have been restabilized or demanaged throughout the grid's reduction codes. It's core depending on how it went. This is one of them timelines, the rehabilitations of the upgrades of us star seeds are being plateaued upon here for.
With all that's going on,
not many.
Right. With all that's going on in the world, it kind of concerns me that sometimes we're looking in the wrong directions as a people. We're being guided or led into a different direction. For instance, in regards to climate change, in regards to DEI, in regards to ESG, all these things that to me are just trying to take our eye off the ball. You know, if you follow magicians or people that do tricks and so forth, there's always a distraction. There's always the look over here, not over here thing. Is it safe that that's what's going on with this or no?
Well, the circulatory codes need to become much better for this plateau. Just like I said, depending on the wave phase, it's not going to go where it's going to go unless it's generated right. There are numerous outspreading points of events.
Going back here a little bit to the communication and transportation things, you had mentioned in the opening here about there was a possibility of going underground with transporting things like a subway type system, or like maybe something like we see Elon Musk putting in other places like Vegas, and he's trying to do something in South Florida, which I don't know how that's going to work with the aquifer and everything underneath the ground in Florida here. But is it safe to assume that we are heading in that direction? There will be underground transport for hazardous materials and so forth?
Well, hazardous materials would not even be considered replication upon this realm. To those indexers, they would have a teleportation module mainframe to be able to take it from one point of effect to another as a safety switch. That wouldn't be movement per se. Like, there are inoculated portals that would replicate humans by standing nodes, a physical, like a door, if you will, that would take from one to another within seconds. Teleport, it would be the same for these types of imagery waves. Because if you're transporting them physically like that, unless you have really advanced equipment, it still would cause a negative scene wave effect. So those would have those type of indexers. Now, the tube systems would go for human-generated codes or smaller plateaus of effect. Luggages, this, that, small, and nothing on a biochemical scenery. So yes, there are different ways to put a safety switch upon all these.
How will electric vehicles impact us? Is this really the thing of the future? Because it always concerns me when people don't understand how the electric system works, how the grid works, how power works. And I don't mean power like somebody in a position of power. I mean actual electrical power, and how things how things are set to move energy. You know, our energy systems is the electric vehicles and electric vehicle systems, are those indeed our future?
They're only temporary because the electromagnetic grid itself is already causing a lot of decommissioning problems. And if you think about it, wheels are not something that should be circulated either, because if we keep putting them on, we keep adding more rows, we're going to keep killing off the planet. Like I said, there are better ways than that. So the electric vehicles could be quantum refurbished to the anti-gravity star pod needs. And if too much is there to be recompensed for the planet, then there are these portals, these teleportation devices that would pull one to another effect, or like that other type of processing status I mentioned beforehand in another show, how they motivated from one plateau to another, like a system and a pulley system, the quantum pull system from one planet to the other, or underneath, where they're being able to polarize the tube systems. You're saving the planet this way. You're maintaining higher stability this way. If you put in a more electric, more this, more that, what's it going to cause in the end? It's obvious that the electromagnetic frequencies are being destabilized upon this platform. They have to manage something more better. And it's not just to think about it for humans. You have to put the rights and justification. Just calls for Kamala Harris as well, for her in an understanding. Give women's rights, give people's rights, give humans rights. Give the rights to the planet and the animals and the cosmos too. You're not equalizing it. And for shame on you. That's all I gotta say.
How, for those who are new again, describe what an anti-gravity star pod unit is, because we say it, but some people may not be able to visually picture it here. And I'm going to put up a picture during the post here, but can you describe what an anti-gravity star pod unit is for people?
Well, if you think about what a seed pod would look like. Now, if you think about something that doesn't have wheels, it's something that's going up in the air that runs on an iota electromagnetic field effect. Yes, there's electromagnetic fields that are priority to that, but it's through quantum retrophetic wavelengths, not of a negative particle effect that is being decommissioned only on that electromagnetic field itself polarized on this grid. Higher indexing points being able to maintain on a neural standard bio-wavelength too. So you're able to replicate what your mind can generate between yourself and that lower plateau. Or that type of star pod unit, if you will. Now, there can come, like I said, a problem if these type of replication codes, if too much is inoculated. Portals, like I said, there's two different wave phases for mankind to be maintaining stability better. Running off two generative wave phases. Star pod units on a glowing retrospheric wave, they run on a hologram generated wave phase. So that hologram projects just outside of the outer line to being able to manipulate different light signature coding waves. Even color spectrums, if you will. Has no windows. It's manualized to the inside of the hologram plateau to be able to stabilize between the in, perpetual, and the out. There's an bioelemental generic coding effect that be able to help with that, just so they can see the inside and the out, or well, seeing the inside to the out. It goes to similar properties like hyperterrestrial units that they have found before. Ones that did not really look like it had windows. It was like a desk. It's the same similar thing. It has windows. It's all around it. Except you can't see it, you gotta go inside to maintain your hyperpolarity sphere. So something humans would be able to generate, but they can't until they learn the right process and all nodes right. Put it in the right place for units to leadership protocol.
Okay, we talked about the anti-gravity star pod units. You had mentioned one other time, though, I think we had talked about boat units. Can you explain what a boat unit is?
Yes, ones that are able to anti-polarity wave just above the surface, fly high into the air or go underwater. In their generative plateau, they're managing on a better reconnaissance way through an aerodynamic polarity sphere. The wind turbines in itself will take away the negative effects of using a propellant system, which most boats use, and it takes away the effects of any types of gas or other types of fuel. It runs on an aerodynamic wavelength propulsion system. The system's easy to make. Humans, it's not impossible to have something very similar to that already. Those little things that just go that far up around the ground that have these fan modules are similar. Except what I am saying is a bit more advanced.
Now, when you had mentioned before about portals, to me, I immediately think of time travel as well. So these portals can take us to a different place. Can they take us to a different time as well?
That submission is an alternative decommissioning node, no. But they can take others to other dimensions. Other dimensions exist in other timelines. That is why humans have heard about time travelers. Because they existed from other dimensions, but as they currently stand on this timeline, regenerate through a different one on that plateau, because it's a different dimension. So what I'm saying is these portals would not mess up this dimension if you went into that dimension. It was a different timeline. it would stay justified through this regular interval.
So to break it down to the basic for people, when I was young, I used to watch cartoons on TV, you know, Saturday morning. That was the thing to do. And I always watched, one of the things I always watched was like Super Friends. It had like Superman and Batman. And then every once in a while they would encounter the Bizarro world, which was the total opposite of what this world was. So the silly question of the day, I guess, is when we talk about other dimensions, does that mean there's another Mike somewhere else, but he may have different personality traits than me? Or does that just mean that's really me over there as I would be here, but experiencing different things at a different time based on the choices that I make?
Well, that's an altered dimensional of the same wavelength. But there are multiple dimensions that differentiate through timelines that go in conjunctions of different planet redux forms, different beings. It doesn't ultimately mean that what you or me is a timeline paradox effect that can ultimately go through multiple dimensions of the same paradox. What I am referring to is portals to another dimension, still on the same timeline, but they're different planets. And it won't mess this timeline up, but their timeline's different. They could be 3,000 years in the future. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
There's two different wavelengths to that. Two meanings.
I had spoken before about this lady I came across. Her name was Delores Cannon. And one of the things because when my spouse had told me about this, I looked at it as well. And one of the things she maintained was that there's like a unit or a mothership or some sort of extraterrestrial transport device, a giant one right outside our atmosphere. And small grays are sent here because they can withstand the pressure, I guess, of our atmosphere. That the beings that were up in this unit are really tall, like 9 feet tall. But for some reason, the small grays are the ones that they choose to come down here because physically they can withstand the pressure. Is that something you've heard of? Is that something that you can lend any credibility to, or is that something you're not familiar with?
Well, yeah, absolutely, because there are different types of species that can only handle different types of gravitational pulls. This planet has a different type of gravitational pull in those species, and obviously, if I'm an avatar to one of the Zeta Reticuli rays, I can tell the DNA that codes on these interferons are very close replication codes to humans. So they have similar attributes in other types of societies and planetary nodes that deal with oxygenated and closer attributes that deals with the anti-gravitational poles with this type of formation. It's similar, so it's easier for them to reenact with it.
It was very interesting to me that you found that I found this lady Delores Cannon, and she kind of solidified some of the things we had been talking about in the past. So if you're unfamiliar with her and you're listening to this, I implore you to look her up. She's deceased now, but from the things I saw of her a few years ago, she made a lot of sense. And you were the only person that I knew of that spoke of experiences like this that I could reach out and communicate with, and it felt like there was validation there. So anybody that's watching or listening to this, look up Delores Cannon as well. You'll find her a little, like in the beginning, she's not very impactful, but when you give it a little bit of a chance, you'll start to come around. You'll go, wow, she's pointing out this, she's pointing out that, and it solidified a lot of the things we've been talking about. So I find that very interesting. Okay, now this earlier in the show, we had talked about, near the very beginning, we had talked about this peace treaty. Is this peace treaty something that exists now, or is this something we're waiting for 45 on?
Well, this peace treaty has been something that's been in formation for over 3 years now, even since he first started Space Force itself. And the simulation is Kennedy Jr. and Sr. and the others of the elites were already starting a distribution and scenes in behind of what the ET's department would be for. Now, this peace treaty has already been widespread between myself and other individuals to the numerous leaders throughout the countries and sectors here. It is a documented document that is not supposed to deprivize the planet, deprivize each other, or deprivize the distribution of life. It is a rehabilitation score that is still being managed and maintained and pulled forward behind the scenes until that time is coming for the full expansion. Right now, we are working on it. That's all I can tell you. We're working on it, and to maintain that coability, while we are working on it, goes into the cooperative scenery of all sectors in the end, managing with the Federation.
Now, we talked about before briefly about your position with the Federation and Space Force. Is there any news to report from your positions there other than what we talked about?
The modulations and the cloning distribution scenes need to be stopped as soon as possible when the negative beings are replicating this. Negativity does not need to be widespread anymore, and division doesn't need to be widespread anymore. To maintain a better stability upon a platform, one has to process the proper leaders into its stead. When that is processed, then the aggregate of the entire documentation of mankind to be able to prevail, move forward, and upload at the right stability point will be in its tone. Other than that, you are all going to keep going round and around and around until you all be decommissioned. There are better ways around this negative scenario.
It's impactful stuff. I implore you to, if you listen to this entire show, go back and listen to it again, because I'm going to have to listen to it again. This has been very impactful. A lot of good information here. Blue, a final word for today.
Yes. The bus systems, the management system, transportation systems, really, that mainly. Get it together, Biden administration. Start thinking about the things that the Federation would want, that our technologies would want, instead of yourselves. And to the lower life forms that have to deal with this bull crap, don't let them ensnare you. Learn your rights, be responsive, learn your receptacles proper, and learn what God has brought you here for in the first place. So with Source Infinitum, your own integrating higher self is what you're here for. Maintain that proper stability.
Awesome. That's wonderful stuff, Blue. Thank you again. Episode 13 in the books. For those of you watching and listening, hey, we appreciate it. Make sure you click like and subscribe and the notification bell there so you're notified when new information is posted. Blue, thank you very much. I look forward to speaking with you next time.
Yep. Thank you, Mike.